Hello everyone, welcome back. Today I'm going to do a book review for you. I'm going to try and keep it as simple as I can. Many books I read, I will often read them, well, always obviously to do with the interests I have, but I will try and read books that are sort of based around things that don't necessarily go in line with my beliefs, and ones that do, obviously. So you get, at that point, you're getting a very rounded knowledge of the subject, which I try and do. And obviously you can't, if you're going to just read books that confirm your own biases, then you're not really going to get that full, all-rounded picture. This and there are that I've read. Gabor Mate's Scattered Minds is one of those. It wasn't a book that I really wanted to read actually at the time, because there was a few beliefs that he had that went against my own. I'm very pleased that I took the recommendation from my friend and did read that book, because indeed in reading that book it actually put together many pieces of the puzzle for me, and I can't recommend that book highly enough. Scattered Minds by Gabor Mate. Please, if you want to understand ADHD for exactly what it is, please read Scattered Minds by Gabor Mate. Now, I'm putting ADHD aside for now, and I'm going to bring you a book which really does tick the boxes of many beliefs that I've had in my life, and many things I've seen, both as a fitness instructor, a personal trainer, in my own personal life. And it is a book, and it is called Brain Energy. It was written by a guy called Christopher M. Palmer, MD, who is a psychiatrist and neuroscientist for 25 years. Now, Christopher Palmer spent many years as a psychiatrist, and he was asked many times, what causes mental illness? And he used to give many long-winded explanations of neurochemicals and neuroimbalances, etc. One day he realised he felt like a complete fraud, and he turned around and he actually said, the fact is, no one really knows. Now, I'm going to halt for a minute now, and I'm going to read you how this book, Brain Energy, starts. And it starts like this. Now, it's well worth saying to start with, I listened to the audio version of this book, and I've listened to it about 3 times now. And it is, well, it's absolutely brilliant, and it could genuinely transform the lives of many. It is revolutionary. And I'm so pleased this guy wrote this book. And what a lovely guy he is as well, by the way. And by the way, on the audio, he actually reads the book as well. So you can actually feel his heartfelt message within that book. And it starts, to my mother, my futile attempts to save you from the ravages of mental illness lit a fire in me that burns till this day. I'm sorry I didn't figure this out in time to save you. May you rest in peace. Now, that is something that also I feel very strongly, even more so, because my own father actually spent a lot of his adult life suffering with very poor mental health, being housebound and hospitalised through poor mental health. And there are many times that actually, of course, I'm not a doctor, but there are many times that, even though I'd like to think I did help and support him as much as I could, that there were times when I would have liked to have helped him more than I could. But unfortunately, I was suffering with my own poor mental health, which at times very much looked similar to the kind of symptoms that he was suffering from. And he was actually diagnosed with schizophrenia. Now, that brings me back to this book. Now, Christopher Palmer sat in his clinic one day with a client or patient, whichever way you want to look at that. And this patient had schizoaffective disorder. Now, schizoaffective disorder is like a combination between schizophrenia and bipolar. The guy who was in his clinic on that day was pretty much housebound through poor mental health. Had all sorts, so delusions, hallucinations, paranoia, you name it, he had it. He came in one day and he expressed that he wanted to lose weight. Now, Dr. Palmer realised that there was no way that he was going to lose weight on his own, and he certainly wouldn't go and see any other doctor. So Dr. Palmer helped him lose weight. Not much was helping, and it was a struggle until they went on a ketogenic diet. Now, he prescribed the ketogenic diet, and after a few weeks, he started to realise, the patient started to realise that a lot of his mental health problems were starting to subside. He was actually starting to disbelieve that there ever were voices in his head, and he was just becoming much clearer. Now, anyone will know who suffers with, who's ever been to that level of poor mental health, that when you get to that stage, it's impossible to separate delusional thoughts from real thoughts. And when it gets to that stage, you know it's at a level. And if it does get to that, you need to go and see someone. You really do. So I will say that. But he started to realise that this ketogenic diet was actually affecting his mental health. Positively affecting his mental health. So as I understand, by the end of this, he'd actually more or less put all of his symptoms into remission and started to live a very healthy, normal life. Now, Dr. Palmer looked at this and he was astounded. He started to do much research into this and actually realised that the ketogenic diet had been used and actually used many times for many years to help people with epilepsy. It's actually a well-researched and proven method of treating epilepsy. And he did his research, started putting two and two together, and realised that many of the drugs that he used to prescribe for mental illness were actually used for epilepsy as well. He realised that he had stumbled on something very, very significant. Now, I'm going to read this out. as he developed this and time went on, he realised, he developed what he says, a unifying theory for a cause of all mental illness. He calls this the theory of brain energy. Now, many times in my videos, you've heard me talk about mitochondria, and how mitochondria are vital in our health. And keeping mitochondria healthy is extremely important for good mental health. I've also said that you can't separate metabolic health from mental health. And when I say these things, I mean it from the bottom of my heart. As I said, I've seen many different disorders working as a fitness instructor, personal trainer, and I've seen how they cross. I've paid attention to that, and I say, as I've said before, I believe with my own mental health that perhaps I've been misdiagnosed. This all comes down to mitochondria. So Dr. Palmer, in this book, talks openly about how the world of psychiatry doesn't work very well. It doesn't. The way that mental health is being managed today. I mean, we don't need anyone who suffers with poor mental health won't need to be told this, really. When people go into the doctors, the psychiatrists, you're led to believe that, or many people are led to believe that they're suffering from a chronic disorder that they can do nothing about. And that the only thing that they can really do is take medication and kind of, they feel that people feel that their life is limited. They feel they're limited to what they can do because of their mental health. And that is a very real thing. I mean, I've seen that for myself many times. I've felt like it many times. When you are in poor mental health, you really can't see out of that. You really can't see out of that. And I won't need to tell anyone that who's in that position. He actually says within this book, and he draws upon many studies, and actually says that there has been years of studies linking metabolic health and mitochondria to mental health disorders. And if it wasn't for those studies, he wouldn't have been able to write this book. And he speaks about those studies within the book. He also talks in the book about how it is almost impossible to distinguish one mental health disorder from another, which is something that I've already spoken about, that I have found extremely difficult to do over the years, and led me going back to the doctors on many occasions in the belief that I was perhaps misdiagnosed, because my mental health has got to a level where it has been so poor. And as I said, the link between metabolic health and mental health, I've seen within when I worked as a fitness instructor and personal trainer, in most notably diabetics. You will often find that many diabetics actually have depression, are medicated for depression. And certainly sort of many he even goes into in the book that actually anxiety and depression have also been shown to be symptoms of cancer. So people can actually feel very depressed or very anxious for no reason, and realise later down the line that they've got cancer. So the bidirectional, what they call bidirectional effects. So essentially, I mean, in the book he talks about bidirectional a lot. So how one thing affects the other, and actually what is affecting what, you know. And you know, when you look at it in that kind of detail, he also talks about how, and this is something I've always believed myself as well, and seen many times, and had suspicions of. But of course, obviously, I'm not in a position to affect this in any way, because, like I've said before, I'm not a doctor. But certainly had my suspicions on, and what I've seen for myself as well, actually, that the medication can have an effect on the effects of exercise. So exercise is a really, obviously really important part of keeping us healthy, and affecting our metabolism in order to make it better. But how medication can actually blunt the effects of exercise. And he talks about that in the book, as well as many other things. It really is a brilliant book. And as I said, any book that I bring you will always be based around things I've seen in my own life, and based around my beliefs. Not necessarily meaning that I, you know, when we read these books, of course we don't always agree with everything in them, but that's what it's about, isn't it? It's about reading things and kind of cross-referencing, etc. But what I will say is there's very little in this book that I don't agree with and haven't seen for myself. And you will hear in this book many success stories as well. And what I will say on that, one thing I will say about what's quite noticeable about that, there's at least 3 success story cases that actually started, the original diagnosis was ADHD, that then led on to you know, really debilitating mental health disorders. But I say you have to read the book and get a full understanding of what he's talking about. For me, this was far easier to understand, I believe. Not only have I seen it for myself, but obviously I've done a lot of stuff on anatomy and physiology, and things like that. So I kind of could start placing things together. But it does take some listening to. But it is a fantastic book, and it is very well endorsed by many within the field. So there are many very highly respectable psychiatrists who have spoke very highly of Dr. Palmer. And as I said, I mean, if you listen to the audiobook, you will hear his heartfelt message. And actually, that was one of the reasons for me bringing this book about, to start with. Why I wanted to review. This is one of the first, but I know I've already reviewed Gabor Mate's Scattered Minds. But I want to do a few more. I want to bring you another one on ADHD, which was written about the same sort of time as Gabor Mate's Scattered Minds, and I'll go into why I like them 2 books in particular in another video. But this book really, Brain Energy by Christopher Palmer. If you are someone who has been diagnosed with a mental health disorder, you know someone who's been diagnosed with a mental health disorder, please spend the money and read this book. You can also go to brainenergy.com, where it explains a lot more about it. Christopher Palmer is also on many podcasts on YouTube. One of the ones that is a very good one to watch is on the Huberman Lab podcast. So for those of you who don't know, Andrew Huberman, a neuroscientist, a professor from Stanford, he has his own podcast on here, loads and loads of subscribers, and rightfully so. Brilliant podcast. Will teach you loads about neuroscience. There is an interview with Christopher Palmer on the Huberman Lab podcast, and he'll talk about all this on there, and you'll get to hear sort of his theories on mental health and yeah, it's brilliant, and it comes from, like I said, a psychiatrist who worked in the field for many years and realised that really the system is failing, and it works for some, but it doesn't work for enough. I could say much more in the book, but I hope that's enough to make you understand that this really is a revolutionary book. You don't need to feel helpless to your mental health disorder. You don't need to feel that you don't have any power over it. And that for me is one of the biggest problems with mental health today. We really do have a very, very lopsided systems in place that place the mental health of people in the hands of medication, and really there is limited. That's a very limited way of. I mean, it's not effective. It's not effective. As I've said before, I don't disregard medication. I would never tell anyone to stop taking medication who's on it. Medication was a lifesaver for me many years ago. And really and truly, any doctor who I listen to who doesn't place some kind of, place for medication, who doesn't see some kind of place for medication, I question that doctor, because there is a place for medication. It's just, unfortunately, in psychiatry, it plays a very lopsided role. And, people's mental health is down to far more than medication. So please, if you or anyone you know is suffering with your mental health, please read, or even better, listen to Brain Energy by Christopher Palmer. It could change your life. It could even save your life. I hope that helps. Take it easy, and I'll see you soon on another video.